Earlier this winter, I shot at one of these dogman creatures with my .22 rifle. Probably an incredibly stupid idea, and I almost got myself killed. These dogmen are scary looking, with tall ears, huge heads, and huge sets of teeth. The one I shot at was easily 8 feet tall. I shot at one of its ribs and fired another shot at its shoulders to try and deter it away from getting into my trailer. They looked like they could cut me wide open if they wanted to. I didn't care though. I wanted to get it away from my trailer. I knew a measly hollow point wasn't going to do anything to this thing, but it did seem to deter it for the time being. The next few days, I felt like I was being watched and followed everywhere I went around the outside of my trailer. This one dogman in particular, the one I believed to be the alpha male of a pack, he was hunting me. He was large and black, the same one I had shot at that seemed to keep trying to come back behind the house. It was very muscular, broad, and honestly resembled a living killing machine. I shot at him with my .22 again, but it didn't seem to do anything to him. It wasn't even remotely bothered that I shot bullets into it. It's like the bullets didn't even do any damage. It kept its pursuit, and I hid inside my trailer for the evening. I knew it was waiting outside for me, but I never gave it the satisfaction of going outside to greet it. The following day, I started to hear strange noises and activity around my trailer. The dogs all throughout my property started to go crazy regularly that day. I could hear them trotting back and forth between my trailer and the thick woods. They had been acting strange the whole day when they were not acting strange the few nights before. Whenever these creatures were around, they knew. Oh yes, they knew. They could smell it. And these things gave off this awful scent like blood and dog. But it's worse than that. It's rotten. I can't even describe it to you. The entire day I was on edge, waiting for this thing to show itself again, as it had been. I knew it was going to. You just have this feeling in the pit of your stomach, this anxiety that something is going to happen. You just don't know when. Imagine being tied up and blindfolded, and know somebody's going to just stab you, but you never know when. I know, weird analogy, but that's the best I can come up with. I don't know why it was so headstrong on trying to break into my trailer, but it wouldn't stop. I clearly couldn't hurt this thing with the measly .22 that I had, but it was the only weapon I owned that could somewhat deter this animal and make it stop. So, I lied in wait most of the time, waiting for it to show itself again. Maybe if I shot it in the eye or something like that, it would go away. Sometimes it would be sneaky and work its way right up to my trailer by crouching. Other times it would just do a bluff charge and then disappear. This creature really liked to show itself at night, so I lied again and wait, because I know it would be more active then. This is the night where things really took off. I remember it was starting to get dark, and I began hearing a strange noise that I had not heard before outside. The moon was bright enough that I could see. It was actually a full moon, which in and of itself was eerie, considering what I was dealing with and the situation at hand. I had my .22 with me, fully loaded and ready to go. Maybe I could shoot this thing in the face and get it to go away once and for all, but I wasn't too hopeful. My dogs were quiet, which was a good sign, because they've always gotten kind of anxious anytime these things are in the area. So I walked outside to see if I could see what was making the noise I was hearing. That's when I realized I walked right into the middle of a damn trap. And then I saw a pair of eyes that were staring right back at me. That's when the situation that I was in turned from mild to absolute horror. Then I began seeing multiple sets of eyes all around me and all around the trailer. There had to have been at least 12 of them, and as my eyes began to adjust, I could see more coming. All of my dogs were dead and were being feasted upon by these creatures. That's why they hadn't made a sound. I just dropped my gun right there and ran back into the trailer and locked the door. There was no way that crappy little gun was going to do anything against a horde of these things. I started to have a panic attack, not knowing what to do or what I was going to do to face these things. Then these things started getting rowdy. I heard growling, howling. They started charging into the trailer, knocking me off my feet, scratching on the windows and the siding. They were just toying with me at this point, like a sadistic monster. These creatures were easily strong and large enough that they could break in if they wanted to. It's like I was an injured or poisoned mouse, with a bunch of cats playing with me right before they were going to eat me. I was sure that this was the end of it, that I was going to be eaten alive and torn into pieces by large werewolf-looking creatures. But something bizarre happened. About 20-30 minutes goes by, and the commotion stops. Everything outside was silent. I didn't even hear the crickets. It was just dead. I stayed inside my trailer the rest of the night, and I did not get a drop of sleep. I wasn't sure if they were baiting me, waiting for me to step out, giving me a false sense of security while waiting for me. I wasn't going to step out into that trap though, not like I did the first time. I'm pretty sure they were baiting me and trapping me. I knew the second I would have stepped foot outside that trailer, they would have grabbed me, and bam, I would have been gone. So, I sat in that trailer for what felt like an entire month, even though it had only been 9 hours. As soon as the daylight began to break, I got outside, stepped out, and to my horror, there were no dog carcasses like I thought there were going to be. Just torn chains where I had them, and blood everywhere. It was like a slaughterhouse. I had about 8 dogs that I kept around me to keep safe. They were all gone. Some might call this next move drastic, but I felt like I was in a dire situation of life or death, and so I just stopped and abandoned everything I owned in that trailer and hitchhiked to an entirely different state and remained homeless for a while. Sure, I took my wallet, my identity, important information like that, but I said screw it and left what little belongings I had in that trailer to rot with those monsters. That was just this winter, and I hope to stay far away from anything like those things again. Alright, look, I'm already extremely paranoid just listening to your channel as it is, let alone submitting what I want to send to you. Because of that, I don't want to give away the exact location of which this is happening, but I will say the state of Mississippi is in dire need of help. Over the last several years, people have been being found mauled to death or just turned up missing entirely when they were last seen around a heavily wooded area. I think you know where this is going, and what I have to say is that I'm pretty sure there is a large cover-up going on. I'm more than sure that you are aware of this from all the encounters you probably receive, but it's getting worse. Sure, how do I know this? Because a couple of the people that have been killed so far have been family of mine, because the only thing I've been told so far is that it is an unidentifiable canine animal. Well, let me tell you something right now. There is no ravenous wolf just running around killing and eating people. Not the size of a damn moose. The police know well what's going on, and they're choosing to keep it under wraps. I don't know anything about proper protocol or what they do and how they keep it under control, but they're doing it. And people are being left in the dark purposefully. People need to be warned about this kind of thing. They need to know that these creatures exist and that they are out there. It's not safe to go into the woods alone anymore. Just a few months ago, shortly after quarantine set in, there was an older gentleman who lives near right by me. He went fishing at a pond who somehow vanished. All they found was his fishing pole and his fishing vest that was bloody and torn up. Ready? They found it about 1.5 miles away from the pond, towards the thicker wilderness. You tell me what happened there. He would have no reason to go further into the woods, which only leads to more national forest. I'm telling you, there is some huge conspiracy at hand here, and I don't know exactly what it is, or why they're trying to cover this whole Dogman thing, but it's been really bothering me lately, and I feel that it's my place to speak out. I hope you decide to read this to your listeners, because I want them to know that it's getting worse. They need to be vigilant and hypersensitive to their surroundings around them if they choose to be out in the woods. We need to stop this nonsense of writing Dogman off as fake creepypasta crap. People are out here dying and getting mauled to death by these things because the general public refuses to accept the truth. As far as Bigfoot goes, I don't know anything about that, and I don't have any personal experience with Bigfoot. From everything I've learned cryptozoology-wise, they're much more docile, gentle beings. But that's besides the point. You wouldn't be hearing about a large unknown predator eating people if it was Bigfoot out there doing this. And I don't know if you know this, but Mississippi is kind of a hotbed for these creatures. If you've ever heard of the town of Taylor, Mississippi, well, they are plagued by these creatures. They call it the Rougarou down here, but I know it's also known as a dogman. I stand firm in my knowledge of cryptozoology and what these creatures are, and I know they are out there. You will never find me out there in the woods alone, because I don't trust that a pistol, a magnum, a machine gun will be enough to stop these things from killing you. I don't know if they are born or put together by the government, or natural or supernatural. I don't care. All I know is that they are killing people, and something has to be done to stop them. The police and government are working together to make sure this happens, and that any word gets out is hush hush. Before I end this, I don't want this just to be a rant. I need to go into more detail about my 2 family members that were murdered. They were found partially eaten, and what the police report described was a large canine. Excuse me, a known large canine. Now, you tell me what you think, knowing all that you do with all of the encounters and stories you get sent. Please, I'm begging you. I want you to read this to your viewers. People need to know this is going on, and it's severe. I'm hurting, and I'm trying to mourn right now for the loss of my family, because these damn things are not being taken care of the way they need to be. Pray for me, listen to me, take warning. If you're going to go out there in the woods at all, whether you are exploring or indulging in recreational activities, you need to be heavily armed to the teeth and watching your back at any given moment. From what I know, these things are highly advanced predators. They are masters of camouflage, incredibly intelligent, and if you think you can outsmart them because they are a quote-unquote animal, well, you're highly mistaken. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to read this. I went for a jog one morning on a nearby trail near where I live, and I came across a series of footprints in the soft clay-like mud. The mud was soft and fairly hard, but had a fairly uniform thickness. Each print consisted of 3 long toes, with a stride around 1 meter. I'd guess the tracks were between 15 inches in length. I'd guess the creature was around 6 feet tall. Neither the stride length nor the number of toes was necessarily normal for any creature, considering it only had 3 long toes, which would lead me to believe it could have been a large bird. But they didn't follow any known animal pattern for toes. It looked very reptilian-like. That to me struck me as odd, because even though this trail was used very much, there are no large lizards out here to my knowledge. And just like that, in that very moment, I saw a flash of quick movement of something large and black nearby in the trees. I saw the back of its head and shoulders move from behind the tree to cross a trail parallel and below me. I got scared and felt like I was in danger. I started hearing a hissing sound and something big moving in the brush. Then, I had the strangest experience I've probably ever had in my life. For the first time, I experienced telepathic communication. No, not like a psychic or something. This was words from something else projected into my own mind. Whatever being was just beyond the trees that I could not see was communicating to me through thoughts. It told me in a dark and deepened voice I needed to leave now and was not welcome in this area. I want you to know that in that moment, it was 100% terrifying. More terrifying than anything you could utterly imagine. I've always wondered about Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, ghosts, anything that goes bump in the night. And in that moment, I believed that there truly was something more than what I perceived to be in reality. I felt had I stuck around longer, I would have been eaten by whatever this creature was. It started stepping towards me as I hesitated, and that's when I ran back all the way up the trail. I wasn't about to piss this creature off, whatever it was. I'm still scared about it to this day. To give you more accurate details of what I could see through the trees, it had really long arms. They were kind of gangly looking. It was kind of slouched over. It looked to be scaly and really dark in color. It was about 20 yards away from me, and it freaked me right out, especially when it started hissing at me, kind of like a large snake does. That was enough for me. I was a student at Texas Tech at the time. Me and my friends would go out at night during the summer months and hang out in this large lake nearby with many cattails, as lakes have. We would just sit there and listen to the bugs and insects and watch the fireflies and enjoy the peace. That's all until one evening that this mysterious creature none of us have ever seen before came into full view that shook all of our realities to a new level. We had no idea something like this could even begin to exist. Out of the water nearby emerged a serpent-looking creature that stood upright on two legs, was stark white, and had the large head of a snake with teeth. It appeared to have a snout as well. It was a very odd-looking creature to behold. All of us, including my friends, were freaking out, trying to hush each other in hopes this thing would not turn and notice that we were watching it. It just walked off into the cattails and out of view. If I had to give estimates, I would say it was no shorter or taller than us, being around 6 feet, but it was pale white and very serpent-looking. It had a long snout on its face and full of sharp teeth. I didn't catch any eyes, but it had a long tail that dragged behind it and claws on its hands and feet. It walked perfectly upright, just like a man does. It didn't even seem like it was unnatural for this creature to walk like that at all. We were really scared. This was really close to us, but since we ducked out of view, I don't think it noticed that we were there. I don't know if I should call it a snake man, lizard man, or what, but I can tell you it was really freaky looking. I don't like to talk about this much, but I remember the day very clearly. It was early in the morning. I was loading grain into the tractor, and there was a storm approaching. My brother, who was helping, got in the truck and got to the barn. The barn was on the highway close by, but still a part of our general area of land. Very few homes around, and not many other farms, so there was seldom traffic. I was probably about 15 or 16 feet in front of the tractor. It was very bright out that morning. The tractor lights were on as well. I was a bit of a wildcat, and was out looking for any nearby bucks I could see that would break through and walk through this area to get to a large pond just on the other side of a small bunch of woods nearby. In that moment, there was a loud snapping sound. It sounded like massive branches being broken. And then as I looked over, I could see it wasn't a buck emerging. This dark, big lizard man-looking thing stepped out from behind the trees and seemed to be scouting its surroundings. It was way too big to be a person. I mean really big. From the distance I could see its muscles flexing, and there was no way it was a person in a lizard suit. It looked scary and very large. It was ripped and had muscles and a very reptile-looking face and head. Estimated distance was maybe 100 feet away from me, but I saw it at an angle where it did not see me, thank God. It took a couple of steps and then turned around. I carry walkie-talkies with my brother, and since he was in the truck, immediately radioed to him and said to my brother, "What the hell was that? Did you see that?" He, of course, didn't answer the way I wanted him to. He hadn't seen it as I did. It disappeared back into the trees very quickly, like it did not want to be exposed for very long. I remember thinking how lucky I was that whatever this creature was did not notice me or even act aggressively towards me or at the presence of me. I have never forgotten that day and pray that I never ever see that thing again. It was a beautiful summer night, and I was on my back porch, which overlooks a small segment of woods, smoking a fine cigar and reflecting on the events of the day. The sun had not fully set just yet, so in the dusk of night, there was still just a pinch of visibility. Plus, I had a few or more lights around my house, so I could see besides just my porch light. Well, I happened to glance up to the right of the woods when I caught a flash of something brown looking, or maybe black, that was very close to the house. I thought at first it might have been a deer, except a deer doesn't resemble anywhere close to the shape that I saw, or the size. My first glance, I thought it was some big tall person in maybe a reptile suit or something. Maybe I was hallucinating, but it moved very quickly. When I first tried to get a better look at it, it appeared to have darted onto the other side of the house where I could not see it. I was not prepared to see what I did shortly, so I stayed standing still, fearing it could be a cougar or a mountain lion at first, and maybe, hopefully I was just seeing things. I have to say at this point, I was a bit shaken up by the initial shape that I saw. I got the feeling in my gut that perhaps this thing wanted to get into my house or to get to me. I did not get a view of it from where I stood, and it wasn't until I actually decided to move off the porch and around to the side of my house, after a few minutes, that I saw this creature in full view. Even though I had caught a quick glimpse of this thing, I still tried to rationalize with myself it was just a cougar, and I was making all of it up in my head. I was thoroughly scared beyond my wits at the sight before me. The first thing I noticed was just how very muscular this creature was. It reminded me of a boxer with powerful long arms. I was looking at a humanoid iguana-looking creature standing there on two human-like legs and a face that kind of resembled an alligator mixed with a gecko. I dropped my cigar in that moment in sheer terror, and this thing turned around and looked at me. It towered over me. It had to have been easily 9 feet, if not maybe a little more. This beast was giant. It ranged from a smoky green color to black, and the front of its body appeared to be lighter in color, but had smooth scales all over it. It looked kind of slimy. It had very long fingers with claws at the end of them. Think kind of like an iguana does, where it has overly exaggerated long fingers and claws. That's what it looked like. It just stared at me in the eyes for a few moments, and then turned back around and walked off into the trees in the direction of the swamp and wetlands. I ran inside immediately and called the police. About halfway through the call with the operator, I somewhat came to my senses and just hung up on them, because I felt like common sense came to me, and I realized they're not going to believe me, even if I told them exactly what I saw. I ran over to my desk and grabbed my small pistol, just in case this thing decided to come back. My speculation is that from the area it came from, there's about 8 or so miles of thick marsh and swampland before it goes back into more thick pine forest. It's very close by, and that's the general direction it came from. Look, I have no idea for sure if it came from the marshes, but it also went back in that direction. There is nothing out there that I know of, and I wasn't waiting around for this thing to come trotting back around. I was not hesitant to be able to put a bullet or two in this thing, or 3. The question is, what would that even do, if anything? I sat around and waited, and it never did come back. Look, I'm usually not the one for toting around the whole swamp monster rhetoric, but where the hell does a 9-foot tall, humanoid reptile even come from?